Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the PlayBridge podcast. This is your host, Ruffin. I'm so excited to share my recent conversation with Audrey Wisch. Audrey is the founder of Curious Cardinals, a network of college mentors that guide and inspire high school and middle school students nationwide. Audrey started the business as a freshman at Stanford and did $600,000 in annual revenue year one, ultimately deciding to drop out of Stanford to pursue the edtech full-time. Since then, more than 3,000 students have participated in their workshops, mentoring, and project-focused courses on things like Bitcoin, venture capital, skincare, and more. This year, Audrey was named Forbes 30 Under 30 at just 21. The Curious Cardinals team has raised $6.8 million in seed capital from top investors including Anthos Capital and Audacious Ventures. I'm so excited to share my conversation with Audrey. I hope you guys enjoy. Hi, Audrey. Welcome to the show. So excited to meet you and to have you on the show today. First of all, how are you doing and where are you calling in from?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on, especially after the wonderful handoff from another participant on your show that was on LinkedIn. I'm calling in from San Francisco and I'm doing great. Really excited to be speaking.
Awesome. Yes. Shout out Isabella with Girls Who BC. She's awesome. So to kick things off, Curious Cardinals is an edtech company that empowers K through 12 students to pursue their passions with the guidance of college mentors. What was the very first version of Curious Cardinals, and how did you and your team get started on this business?
Yeah, so Curious Cardinals emerged pretty organically. It starts in the pandemic. I was a history major at Stanford. I thought I was pre-law with aspirations to be the next Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I thought I had my 10-year life plan set. And I taught English. One of the things I did at Stanford as an extracurricular was taught English to members of the janitorial staff, which was always the highlight of my week. I loved it. And I got super into the teaching part of it. And then I was sent home from Stanford due to the pandemic and had some extra time on my hands, couldn't continue with what I was doing. So reached out to a bunch of families and decided to start tutoring. Tutoring students observed how disengaged and uninspired they were with what they were learning in school and how they were absorbing and regurgitating what they were reading in a textbook, but they didn't know why they were learning what they were learning. So that inspired me to apply what they were learning in school to my own passions in hopes of igniting their imagination for what they could pursue and why, and saw that got them really jazzed up about it. One of them asked for math help then, and I wasn't as passionate about math. So that's where my eventual co-founder came to the picture. Alec was an aerospace engineer at Stanford, and he started applying what they were learning in math to how airplanes fly. And fast forward, the parents were telling all their friends. And I'm a super connector by heart. So naturally, when people were coming in asking to learn and pursue topics that we weren't super passionate about, we could have taught. I was bringing in my other peers who were meanwhile looking for ways to either make money or do something meaningful. And it didn't feel like many opportunities to do both. So they were very excited about this. And Curious Cardinals was born. My co-founder and I were speaking about the disconnect and the lack of passion in learning and how students learn in such silos and the world is totally hyper-connected. And there's so many ways to bring meaning and purpose to learning that wasn't happening. And there's disengagement. Mental health is at an all-time high. And kind of zoning out to the macro climate of education. The system's broken. It's completely antiquated. And these problems that have existed for eternity are exacerbated by rapid technological advancement that just makes mental health, tension between parents and students, academic pressure, all of these things that much more tense. And so we saw firsthand how this solution was solving that. And we realized it wasn't necessarily tutoring, it was actually mentorship and really the ability to learn from someone who you could see yourself in. So that was June of 2020. We launched our first Wix website. We both had summer internships. That fall, I convinced a bunch of other friends to pursue Curious Cardinals as a pandemic gap year project. And we moved into the Cardinal Crib in West Hollywood And now it's it's almost 3 years later. June of 2023 is coming around the corner. And now there is a team of 13 of us working full-time at Curious Cardinals, and over 450 college mentors from 30 plus universities, but all started from that one-on-one learning experience that we had, and the belief of what it could be at scale and the power and impact it could have at scale.
So cool. And it's such a need, because thinking back to like my school days, there were just so many topics where I'm like, I will never use this. I have no interest in this. Like, how does this apply to my life, my future at all? So I'm curious, who were like some of the first students that you tutored, and what were the topics that you were tutoring them on, and how was it different from like what they were learning in the classroom?
Yeah. And I mean, the model today has morphed from these very early experiences. And now tutoring at Curious Cardinals is the T word. It's like, we don't say it because it has this connotation of being tutoring that is super transactional, like preparing you for Friday's test, as well insinuates some sort of deficiency. And we want this to be something that empowers and builds confidence and inspires, not like a Band-Aid solution. And also that is through consistent meaning and a relationship-driven approach. So students with us today are either doing the exploratory journey, where they're exploring what they're interested in, the passion project for pursuing a passion, or general academic mentorship, which is what people could typically conceive as the word that shall not be named, but also some more generic mentorship in there. When I started, I just did a bunch of cold email outreach. I sent my resume around. I was asking friends if they knew people with younger kids. I am the third child, so my parents didn't, and found some people. And I was tutoring one student in like history and English and writing, and then the other in Spanish. And with the girl who was learning Spanish, she was super passionate about fashion and also interested in human rights. And so I was like, why don't we just read articles in Spanish on these things? Or why don't we actually practice speaking through the topics that you're actually interested in, instead of like the colors or a random food group that like has no relevance to you. So from the beginning, it just felt very logical of like, let's just bring meaning beyond the language itself to this learning. For the other student, I actually had a pretty key light bulb moment that I haven't reflected back on in a while. So I was really passionate about, as I said, criminal justice reform, immigration reform, a lot of social justice. And I was a Supreme Court lawyer junkie and passionate about all cases. I was working with this girl and asking what she was learning about in school. And she was telling me about some of the Supreme Court cases she was learning. And I asked her to hone in on one. And she said, I was learning about TLO versus New Jersey, which pertains to reasonable suspicion versus probable cause standard with search and seizure in schools. This girl's like an 8th grader at the time. And I was like, so what do you think about this? What's your opinion? And she says, well, the Schools Act and local parentis, and she keeps going. And I'm like, this girl has no idea what she is saying. She is literally absorbing and regurgitating what she read in the textbook and has no idea what she's saying actually means, its context, its relevance. And I said, do you know about the school to prison pipeline? And she said, no, what's that? And I said, do you know what a school looks like with in-school policing? And she said, no. And I was like, had my crazy light bulb moment of like, oh my God, she is literally not given the context to inform her opinion on the subject matter. No wonder she doesn't care about it. No wonder it doesn't mean anything to her. And meanwhile, that was kind of in the midst of, or right before the midst of the Black Lives Matter movement in spring of 2020. So to be able to, then from there, I was like, can I give you a documentary to watch and like a few articles to read? And she was like, okay. And so that was it. Like we barely went back to school work from there on. And it was just like me teaching her things, exposing her to things that I wish I had learned earlier, as well as leaning into her curiosity, the questions she asked to show her the next thing, and literally teaching her things that I didn't learn till college, and she was an 8th grader. So like, that's really how it started. And I had so much fun with it. And it was so inspiring too, to see what she was capable of when someone believed in her and gave her the opportunity to do just that. But it morphed from conventional tutoring in the beginning.
So cool. So you had this experience, these first experiences with different students, teaching them different things. You brought in your co-founder who has maybe more of a math focus. How did you guys make the decision to go full time on the business and move into that house in West Hollywood and really go all in on Curious Cardinals?
Yeah, there was like a few different phases. Phase one was, let's just do this as a summer passion project. And we were like, we'll just do it on the side. And we ended up spending more time on it than our internships. Alec, my co-founder, had literally 2 virtual internships. I don't know how he had figured out how to make the time. And we were just so into it. We were spending so much time on it and having so much fun with it. And there was also just a very organic gravitational pull of excitement and energy and demand on both sides. More college students coming in and wanting to be part of this community and wanting to mentor for Curious Cardinals, and more parents learning and wanting to sign up. So that summer, I was the initial person who convinced Alec and a few other peers who were actually mentoring at the time, like, let's do this. And I just realized I was learning so much and having fun with it. And it felt like something entirely new. I don't really know how it came to me. I think that I was still teaching the subjects that I thought I was pursuing professionally. So it didn't really feel like a divergence. It wasn't really until fall, when I was kind of doing it full time, that I was like, wait, this kind of feels like diverging from the path I thought I was going down, and started questioning whether I had a problem or not with that. And then it was the end of that year where I was like, okay, time to go back to school. It's been a fun gap year. And my co-founder, Alec, was like, let's do this full time. We are just getting started. Think about how much we've accomplished this year and what a pivotal time in history. It really feels like we're on the precipice of change in K-12 education. And we only have this opportunity once. And so on that side of a year later, he was the one kind of convincing me. And here we are.
One, how did you go about convincing other peers and other college students to get involved and become mentors? And did you do any kind of like vetting process for like who could be a mentor with Curious Cardinals?
Absolutely. We are super selective with who we bring on, and the application process has changed immensely since we started, but there's always been an application and there's always been a high barrier to entry. How do I convince people? I mean, to this day, if I am on a college campus and I pitch someone Curious Cardinals, their immediate response is like, what's the catch? Like, am I missing something? You just said, like, teach whatever you're most passionate about. You're going to be matched to your dream mentee, like a mini you. You can say yes or no to engagements. Hours are flexible and you get paid really well. And you get access to this amazing community of parents, professional job opportunities. Like, everyone's always like, what am I missing? We're like, that's it. It actually is that amazing. So I think just leaning into that. And when people hear teach what you wish you knew, that's super empowering. I think that we all reflect on what we wish we knew earlier, but especially when you transition from the high school to college phase, it's often thinking like, why did I think that way? Or why did I have that assumption? Or why did I doubt myself in that capacity? And so to have like, it's almost a therapeutic experience of being able to give that gem of advice or wisdom to someone else that you wish you could have heard is so rewarding and so energizing. So people love it. And I think people really gravitate towards that opportunity. And then we're super lucky. Mentors stay with us often throughout college. Now we have some of our first mentors who started with us as freshmen who are seniors now. And mentors tell all their friends. So we're really lucky on the recruiting side. The interview process now is a 3-part process. There's a application you submit, and then you have a recorded application, and then you speak with our team, and you have to teach something because you can be the most impressive person in the world. But if you can't make quantum mechanics intelligible to us, and that's the thing you want to teach, then you probably can't do it to a 7th grader. So there's a lot of kind of nuance to evaluating for the type of person who would make a great mentor.
What are some of the college campuses that mentors are on? And once they get into the program or become mentors and are accepted, do you guys help them like build out curriculum, or is it really, they kind of take it where they want to go?
Totally. Mentors are at 30 plus universities. As I said, right now, startup focus is everything. So as much as there's more campuses we want to expand to, we have no intent of being elitist. It's not like we want to stick with predominantly Stanford and Ivy League forever, though that has been the schools that it has spread most organically. And we're focusing more on expanding on the demand side right now. So kind of letting it happen organically. But most of our mentors to that end are at Stanford and Harvard and kind of scattered amongst other schools, Brown, Dartmouth, Northwestern, Duke, USC, lots of amazing schools all over. And it's fun too for mentors to get access to this community of the most passionate, impressive college students across the country. And like even in summer times, like who else is interning in New York this summer, like mentor meetup. So that's a really fun component. On the curriculum side, so actually the first person we hired full-time was Lucy, who was our head of learning design. She just got promoted to head of education. And she had a year before gotten her master's in this Harvard Graduate School of Education and project-based learning. So she's like a project-based learning pro. And our whole thing is that we don't proclaim to be experts. We show students what the pursuit of passion looks like. So we're not teachers, we're not certified experts in any ways, but we want to deliver top-notch, high-quality learning experiences. And so we want to support mentors with resources and materials to deliver top-notch instruction. So we have extensive resources and curriculum. The main thing for us that's the constant is the structure and the kind of outline of engagement. One of the things we really pride ourselves in doing is goal setting. You don't really set goals in school. You're not like, I want to become a better writer, or I want to gain more self-confidence, and I want to do it within this time frame. And so goal setting is a huge thing at Curious Cardinals and core to all the engagements. So there's structure in how to run a session, the number of sessions, hitting session milestones, and there's a little bit more variability in how you actually deliver the topic, or maybe infuse it with your own flair or style, or accommodate it to your students' interest in soccer and dance as well. So we want to create that space. We like positive constraints, really. So there's structure for high quality, but space for mentors to run with their creativity and really meet their student where they're at.
Incredible. So since you brought up the demand side, your students, you and your co-founder did $700,000 in revenue year one, which is absolutely incredible, when it was just you guys, which is truly insane. How did you and Alec really grow that customer base, and like what have been the most successful channels for growth?
Totally. That first year was wild. And it just like took off so organically without us even realizing. We were so lucky. The day before everyone moved into the Cardinal crib, I got to speak on behalf of Curious Cardinals on CNN. And that Thursday was a Sunday, I spoke on CNN. We got an email or a message on our like really crappy website at the time. We were like, this must be spam. This is not real. And one of our mentors, someone in their family worked at CNN. So they had heard them mentoring and thought it was an amazing story to share. So like suddenly we got so much traffic and so much interest, and we had a terrible website and didn't even know what to do with it. But like certain opportunities like that, we're just so lucky and really brought this momentum and excitement as well as credibility to the brand we were building. And I think part of it too, in that first year, we said yes to everything. We worked with schools, public, charter, private schools. We worked with 2 Fortune 500 companies. We started our financial aid program. We were working with families. Like we were just doing everything, yes, left and right that came our way. And that was amazing for a first year of just crazy learnings and figuring out. And we didn't even know we were in the process of finding product market fit. It was just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's try it out. You need help there? Sure. And we were doing some group workshops too. So I think not necessarily what I'd recommend to everyone as the starting point, but we learned so much in that year and were able to see where there was the most excitement and where we were able to deliver the most unique value in our model. And then after that first year, we didn't realize it takes time to raise money. We raised money, and that was right before back to school season, which is kind of our peak period. And that was the year 2021 when a lot of students were going back in person. So there was a little bit of a phase where suddenly investors were like, what's your go-to-market strategy? And I was like, what's a go-to-market strategy? And it happened so organically. And we were also like, okay, we really need to make sure that people are going back in person, that this is the optimal experience that they would rather do online with Curious Cardinals than any other alternative. And so that pushed us to make massive simplification that we hadn't done before and really get back to the basics and strip down everything else. And to this day, word of mouth referrals has been the biggest growth avenue. And then community events where current parents in our community who love Curious Cardinals host a coffee chat or a curious coffee or curious cocktails to introduce Curious Cardinals to their friend because they've had a really positive experience or their child has done something extraordinary and they love it and they want to share it. And so it's really been the generosity of this community that has fueled our growth and been the most impactful way to grow.
So when COVID kind of reset and students went back to schools, how did that impact Curious Cardinals? And did you guys have to shift the business at all?
Yeah, what we had to do was focus and simplify. And as I said, like first year was doing everything and coming our way. That was also the transition period. We were suddenly venture backed. And so it was a maturing era where you suddenly can't just say yes to everything. And it's not like every yes or every partner or client is good. It actually should be a lot more honed in and focused. And so we had been doing group workshops. We had been working with schools, as I said, been working with Fortune 500 companies. So we really simplified so we could be the best at the thing we were doing and really nail the model. And that was this one-on-one model, selling direct to parents and focusing on those 3 tracks, as I said, the exploratory journey, if you have no idea what you're passionate about, the passion project for those pursuing, and then the general academic mentorship and taking away the classes and all the other avenues, except in certain instances. Like the only other way we work with partners is through our financial aid program, which is slightly different, but is still true to the model as it exists today.
Amazing. And where are many of your students and communities?
They are all over, which is what's so fun and exciting. We do have a lot of students in New York and the Bay Area and LA. We have students though, Seattle, Dallas, Austin, DC, Singapore, Hong Kong, like really that's the cool thing, the power of virtual learning. And we have students in grades K through 12. It's most really like 3rd to 12th. And it's all kinds of students, honestly. One of our core values at Curious Cardinals is championing individuality. Our whole thing is meeting students where they're at. So that means we have everything from like the overachiever student who's craving more and wants to be the best of the best and wants to learn things that they typically otherwise couldn't learn till college. And we have the student who's disengaged, hates school, hates how they learn in a classroom, and like is craving, maybe they don't even realize they're craving an opportunity to learn in an alternative model, but their parent really wants them to do something productive and engaging. And then they find something that they're like, I actually like this a lot. And they are learning. It's just a unique learning style that meets them where they're at. And then there's often students who are struggling or really lacking confidence, and parents come being like, I would love someone who can help them gain that sense of self-confidence. So even the type of student is versatile, which is super fun.
Are there any super popular topics that your students focus on, or is it really still pretty individualized?
Popular, I would say that entrepreneurship is pretty popular, which is cool. And what's cool is like entrepreneurship, launching a blog, those are things, starting a personal website or building a website that like the learnings itself are not standardized, but are somewhat constant, but there's so many different lenses through which they can apply that. We have a student who's making a blog on interviewing people in different career paths. We have a student who's making a blog talking about their experience learning with Curious Cardinals and writing about the future of education. We have a student making a blog on the intersection of fashion and feminism, interviewing female women in fashion, and also commenting on fashion and feminism trends. So like so many different ways you can take that, but you're learning how to put something up, create a brand, put yourself out there, share your ideas with the world, and then even think about like the thing at that point too. It's like, okay, amazing. You've built this content together. What's next? Like you want actually listeners, or you want followers, or you want viewers, so that your ideas can actually impact people in some way. So all of these things that are highly entrepreneurial things to learn that often aren't taught in a classroom are so much of what I think students are craving to learn, but also really empowered. And so it's exciting to see them from everything from like entrepreneurship to fashion and feminism use this as a channel to manifest their dream and then kind of like really pursue a passion they have authentically and while learning new skills.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship is definitely a topic, at least when I was going through, that was missing from high school, undergrad, so it's very important that it's being taught.
Sustainability is also super popular in its own way, like students going with different approaches, but students, especially, I think it's a lot of Gen Z. Like Gen Z is craving to learn the greatest problems that face society today, from climate change to racial injustice to all sorts of inequity. And not all classrooms properly teach that. And students want to learn that, not just to know, but also because they crave to making impact in some way. So I feel like there's a lot of that, like students wanting to do things and wanting to also be treated seriously, like wanting someone to look them in the eyes and be like, hell yeah, you can do that. Like, let's go for it. Or yeah, you're capable of learning that and not just learning it in a silo, but actually contributing it in some way. So that's another kind of fun trend to see, especially in middle and high school students.
So you touched on this a little bit. You and the Curious Cardinals team raised venture capital funding. You raised a $4 million seed round led by Audacious Ventures and Anthos Capital. Can you share what prompted you and your team to raise venture capital? And were there any resources on the Stanford campus that helped you guys in that path?
Yeah. So as you shared, we were profitable from when we started. And we're really fortunate that in that first year, we were able to pay all the other, we were paying the mentors, of course, but the other people who were helping in different capacities from the money we were making. It was when we decided to do this full time and hire full-time employees that we realized if you're going to bring someone on board with a family or other commitments or who's leaving a very stable job elsewhere, it's our obligation to raise venture funding to be able to provide that sense, that financial stability, and demonstrate our commitment as well as other professionals' commitment and partnership and belief in this vision of Curious Cardinals. So that kind of happened in parallel when we were like, okay, we're bringing more people on board. Actually, one of Audacious Ventures, one of our investors, we were connected to through someone who was an advisor named Anu Sheel at StartX. So honestly, we did not start this when we were at Stanford, really. So way less connected to the Stanford entrepreneurship ecosystem than many, because there are so many resources. But we participated in a program called StartX, where we met a technical advisor, and he introduced us to the team at Audacious. So that's amazing that happened in that way. And then when we were raising money, we reached out to a bunch of our first families, and we said, we're raising, if anyone's interested or knows anyone. And one of the first clients had referred us to another parent who was a client, and we had no idea he ran a fund. And he actually that winter had called, and I was doing customer support and parents and everything at the time, and still do to this day. But he called me and was saying that he wants to take his 4th grade son out of school to do Curious Cardinals full time. And I was like, are you crazy? What? We're not a school. We've never done that before. And he was like, my son loves the one-on-one learning with his mentor, and he's really disengaged in school. Can we figure out a way to make this work? And we were like,
wow.
Okay, as long as I was probably almost too transparent in saying all that we didn't know and trying to over amplify our lack of qualifications. But he was like, let's make it happen. I believe in you guys, and the mentors have been exceptional. So we put together a school basically for Ned and figured out the homeschooling accommodations. And Ned was learning creative writing, environmental science, architecture, design thinking, philosophy, physics. There's maybe 1 or 2 more subjects as a 4th grader, one-on-one with his mentors. And it was phenomenal and so exciting to hear about what this incredible 4th grader was learning. And so when we were reconnected to him, he said, my son's learning didn't just 2x, it 10x, it soared. He's never learned so much and in such an impactful way. And so we, at the time, I think we're going to raise like $750K, or maybe it was 1.25 million. And then he said, raise way more, and I want to lead the round or do the whole thing. And that kind of changed the game for us. We raised 4.25 million, but we raised a bit more after. So we had raised 6.8 million in that seed round. And that was really, really incredible to have someone as well participate who was a parent firsthand, who had experienced Curious Cardinals and understood the authenticity, and that it was just students running the show, and had felt how much it impacted his son, that he was so inspired by the impact it could have with venture-backed scale.
Wow, that is such a cool story.
Yeah.
And is homeschooling something you offer for other students now as well?
We have a few younger students who or actually we have a few high school students too. We have a few homeschool students who turn to Curious Cardinals kind of as an elective within their school day. So some are working with more mentors than others, but it's been really fun for Curious Cardinals to be able to plug in, and those students have more time available. So they're able to do such extraordinary things, which is awesome.
So amazing. Any just general advice you would have for other maybe student founders or first-time founders for a fundraise, or, maybe just a general piece of advice for building their first business?
Lots. Could go in many different directions. Someone yesterday asked me this, and one thing I always say is, especially for those who want to start something or want to dip their toes in entrepreneurship, I feel like a great first step is having a note stock or your handy dandy notebook and just writing problems you identify in your life, and just getting in the process of seeing problems and believing that you actually could be the one to solve that problem, and just putting them down, letting the ideas marinate. And if there's something that like you can't stop thinking about, go do something with it. So I think that's a really great first step, at least demystifies this, like, how do I even get started? Where do I begin? I think another thing that is so important is the scrappiness of it all, and not going in and starting with having to raise venture funding, because there's so much you can do with so little, especially as students. There's so many amazing resources if you were a college student at any university, frankly, but especially now with tools like AI, you can just accomplish so much, put so much out in the world. There's so many no-code, low-code tools that my co-founder actually isn't technical, but in the first year, he used Zapier integrations like an Olympic Zapier champ. And it was amazing how much we were able to automate and how efficient we were able to make all of our systems on the back end, because he's a problem solver and he loves building and creating and figuring out how to make things work better and smoother and more efficient. So I just think there's so much to do with so little. And the unfortunate, I think, misconception is that, like, you need money or you need resources or you need professionals. And the best thing ever is when you roll up your sleeves and get in the weeds and figure out how much you're capable of accomplishing independently. So I think it's then like just getting things out there, and no task is too small. No task is too great. Nothing is out of the possibility for what you can accomplish if you care deeply about the problem and have the mentality to work through it.
Yeah, definitely agree. I feel like if you can do a lot with a little, like just off bootstrapped, one, it's just going to set you up for incredible success. Like probably being able to show that you guys did 700,000 in revenue with basically no funding, right? I mean, that probably set you up for an incredible fundraise and,
open up so many doors. And then I think the other thing that like starts as students founders but have carried on as, Curious Cardinals, one of our core values is lifelong learning, is the mentality of a student, which is like, it is okay not to know everything. People expect you're not going to know everything. You raise your hand in class, you talk to the teacher after class, you go to the library, like you are there to learn, and everyone almost gives you permission to learn and to not know. And then you see a transition sometimes where people feel like they can't not know and they have to pretend to know. And so I think that mentality of like, yeah, we're young students to this day now running a team and going into year 3 of doing this, we still keep that mentality and that humility that we are constantly learning. We are lifelong learners, and we don't have to know the answers as long as we have the grit and the mentality to solve the problem, find a solution. That's all that matters. And so I think like that student mentality should never die and is so powerful.
Completely agree. I feel like no matter where you are in your career, it should absolutely never die. Yeah. Always learning. Best motto. To that point, EdTech has, become a massive industry. There's been tons of investment into the space, especially over the last few years. Curious about some of like the exciting trends that you're seeing, or just different themes or companies that you're watching in the space.
Trends in EdTech. So many exciting trends. Personalized learning, project-based learning, interdisciplinary learning are 3 I'm really excited about. I'll start with personalized learning. There is so much with technology, especially AI, that we are all capable of enabling for students to actually facilitate learning that meets them where they're at, ties in their interests, validates the things they're already excited about. I actually didn't talk about kind of the core pillars of Curious Cardinals, but it's 1 year peer mentorship, 2 passion-based learning, project-based learning, and representation matters. You already can see near peer mentorship, learning from a college student who's not too much older in age than yourself, so they can set out the path where they got to and make it feel attainable. Passion-based learning is starting with students' existing interests and showing their applications in an interdisciplinary way. So maybe they love sports, you can learn sports analytics or sports journalism, or maybe they love cosmetics and their daily skincare routine, learn cosmetic chemistry, and really demonstrate the interconnectedness of the world and validate the things they already get jazzed up about and help them imagine a pathway forward. And I mean, think about any workplace, it's always about garnering collective buy-in and anchoring everything back to that greater North Star, that greater why. Why are you doing this tedious spreadsheet, or why are you building this thing or calling this person? It should all ladder up to that why. And we don't do that activity with kids in schools. We don't tell them why they're learning what they're learning in geometry or why they're reading what they're reading in Shakespeare. So of course they're disengaged and not bought in. And so our model is a lot about anchoring it to the why, but it can be hard to enable that type of personalization in a classroom for a teacher who's been teaching for many years and doesn't have the time or resources or support to develop new curriculum. And so I think AI is just such a phenomenal tool to imbue some individuality and different learning models to get students more excited and engaged. So that's something I'm super excited about. Project-based learning and that's our 3rd pillar. Not all of our engagements culminate in project deliverables, though many do. More than anything, it's about the ethos of project-based learning, where I didn't take computer science in high school, not because I wasn't interested, but because I thought maybe I'll get a bad grade and it'll tarnish my chances of getting into Stanford, which is such a terrible reason not to try something. So we aim to detach that fear of failure and encourage exploration. And project-based learning is so cool because you can learn something and demonstrate your skills and not fear that grade, as I said, or like fear that failure, but it's putting something out there into the world. And there's so many little ways to do this. I never saw myself being an entrepreneur, but when I think back to it, I was the type of like lower schooler that was doing lemonade stands and starting little businesses and running a camp and like doing all of that stuff. And that's such a perfect opportunity to talk about business and unit economics and incentives and supply and demand and like all of these skills. And it felt like a fun project for me. Even things like I like making videos with my friends, like learning video editing, graphic design. Like if you make something a project, suddenly it feels fun. Suddenly it feels like something that students have autonomy over and agency in. But there's so many tangible learnings you can have, and they feel a lot more related to the applications that you will be applying in the real world with the certain skills. So I think there's just so many cool ways that hopefully project-based learning gets more integrated in how we teach kids, but it is becoming a lot more common, not mainstream, which is very exciting and promising because I think it's a very compelling, powerful learning model. And then interdisciplinary learning. There's so many ways, as I said, to demonstrate the interconnected nature of everything, and also to really think about how we tie subjects together. At Stanford, there's a really popular major called symbolic systems. That's not just learning computer science, but also psychology and neuroscience and how brains work and minds work and computers work and kind of bringing it all together. And there's ethics and tech in there too. And I think that that is the way the world is going. It's never been so interconnected, and more learning models that really take into account what students are interested in or what's happening in the real world. And then think about these skills like writing, communication, problem solving that are the skills students need to learn, are the really important foundation, and how you can tie it all together instead of learning in silos. So those are kind of 3 learning trends, learning directions that I'm very excited about and optimistic. And then it's also really cool. We're in K through 12, but to see a lot of the adult learning opportunities out there, because it is kind of wild, like so arbitrary that we decided you learn from K through 12, you get 4 years of college, and then you never go back into a classroom. And as I said, like you can have that lifelong learning mentality no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, but it's still not common. And that's just the normal thing that we've all accepted. So I love all the different ways that there's different learning models for adults to change their careers or to expose themselves to new things. So even though that's not our space, I think that's amazing.
Definitely. I think with the virtual world also just opened up so many more opportunities for adult-based learning.
Yeah, 100%.
And really wish project-based learning was a thing when I was going through school, because it was truly all about the grades. Like that's all I thought I should care about. And it was basically all I cared about at the time, which is honestly terrible.
I know. And it's so like you've heard people like study for the test and like not actually what are you learning and why are you learning it and why does this matter? And so it's like incentives are not aligned, or like how we have built the system and how we're incentivizing students is not actually aligned with maybe what's in the best interest of their futures.
Definitely. Anything exciting coming up for you and the Curious Cardinals team in the next year that you want to plug or share?
Back to school season. Starting the 2023 to 2024 school year on a high note with your Curious Cardinals mentor. We're excited for new fun launches coming with that time of the year. And this is going into our summer of possible. That's the theme for summer. Just excited for we are constantly iterating and changing, as I said, everything from the interview process to our curriculum to marketing to all of it. So just really excited we kind of operate on a seasonal basis because we're aligned with the school year model. So excited for the future seasons to come. And it's kind of crazy because when you're in school, I don't know if you think of things on like the semester system or the quarter system or junior year or senior year. And I get to see so many of our students grow up as the company grows. And so it's fun, like students who, my first mentee, for example, one of the ones I started with was an 8th grader when I was working with her, and she's going into her senior year this year. So
Wow.
to see kind of like that full circle and also see how much the company has grown is really exciting. So excited for
cool.
back to school season.
So cool. Will students ever become mentors, and maybe she'll be the first one when she goes to college, or can college students continue on learning?
So we've had our first students become mentor, which is amazing. And we probably had like our biggest class of seniors who've been with us for 2 years this year. And already all of them have been like, can I sign up now? And I'm like, no, you got to wait till you're in college. But so excited for that pipeline to continue growing and building, because that's such a 360 beautiful experience. And then, so some mentors stop when they graduate. Others have time and want to continue, and we have a few mentors who are like 2-3 years out of school or grad students, so as long as it's near peer, and maybe those students work with the older high schoolers, and we've had funny stories too, like this amazing mentor, Charlotte Jones, we love her. She was at Northwestern. She was a computer science mentor. She had like 10 mentees, all younger girls learning to code with her guidance, and she graduated and was working at Goldman Sachs or Google or somewhere amazing as she does. And she writes us like 3 months into having stopped and transitioned her mentees to be like, she writes, I am having withdrawal for my mentees. Can I have a few of them back? I really miss them. And we were like, that is so sweet. And they're newly matched, but we will get you new mentees and we would love to welcome you back. So we even sometimes have that where mentors are like, bye, I'm gone, and come back crawling.
Oh, so special. That leads me to my final question. Can you share a female founder, investor, or leader who inspires you, and a little bit about why?
Yeah. Am I allowed to share two?
Yes, definitely allowed to do that.
Okay, I'll share two, and I'll share why. One is Deb Liu, who is the CEO of Ancestry, and she founded Facebook Marketplace, and she is a Curious Cardinals investor, advisor, and mom. And she has been a rock, constantly there for us. Actually, after we closed our seed round, I turned to our investors and said, I would love a female founder or CEO mentor. So one of them connected us. And the story there is kind of funny. I got 15 minutes on our calendar and we spoke. It actually ended up going to like 45 minutes. And after the call, I come out to my co-founder, and my parents have a really cute fluffy dog named Tuna. Tuna's adorable, super confident, but when Tuna gets a haircut, Tuna looks kind of like a rat, and Tuna's like suddenly super not confident and like feels kind of naked, and like everyone sees how tiny she actually is. And I come to my co-founder and I'm like, I feel like Tuna after a haircut. And he knows exactly what that means. And he was like, what happened? And I was like, she read right through me. She saw everything that's wrong with me and the business and gave so much feedback. And I was like, but it went wrong. Maybe it went well. And then that evening, our investor texts us like, good job. Clearly the call went well, and sends the tweet. And she tweeted something like, met a 20-year-old founder who had, I wish I had her confidence at her age, or she's a rock, something so sweet that I was like freaking out and running in circles like, oh my God, I thought she hated me. And then since she has been an invaluable advisor there for us every step of the journey, but she truly taught me in that moment. And another Curious Cardinals investor, Mark Katz, the co-founder and CEO of Semi, taught me this, which is it's not brutal honesty, it's candor with care. And in that moment, I was like, this is the greatest gift, feedback. And she only did this. She went over the time because she believes in me and she sees potential in me. So she is that honest with me. And so I am so grateful for that lesson and to her for this day. The other woman I wanted to mention is a new Curious Cardinals mom, Alexa Von Tobel. She runs an amazing podcast too. And she's now the managing partner of Inspired Capital and is a former founder. And she too, from our first conversation, offered to be supportive and gave some feedback and thoughts. And on our second conversation, and I've only just recently met her, I felt that same thing of like, I'm going to be really honest with you only because I care. And on our journey, we're going to find a few people who give us the gift of feedback. And that's because they believe in us. So I feel really, really grateful to have someone new who kind of just entered the story, as well as someone who's been there now over a year with us and has just been such a rock and constant force of support and inspiration and bravery. And these women who lead with kindness, and they're super connectors and amazing, but also honesty, because they know that that's the greatest way to support someone and be there for them, is telling them the things that they might not realize or others aren't sharing.
Yeah. Feedback can be so hard to give and to receive, but it goes a very long way and is so meaningful. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then finally, where can people find you and where can people find Curious Cardinals?
CuriousCardinals.com, CURIOUS, Cardinals. I'm not going to spell that one out.
I'll link it.
I don't know why I spelled curious, honestly. CuriousCardinals.com, Curious Cardinals Instagram and LinkedIn. We're present on LinkedIn and Instagram, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. I try to share learnings and what's happening in our ecosystem. And yeah, hope people stay in touch, or for any parents or college students who want to be mentors, they join our community.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's just truly so inspiring what you and your team are building. So it was such an honor.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me and for celebrating female founders and investors and innovators with so much warmth and enthusiasm. I love it and so appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the PlayBridge podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And for more updates, make sure to follow us on social at Bridge Club. That's at BRYDGECLUB at Bridge Club on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.